All right, we are officially broadcasting on YouTube, and we can start in 3, 2. Welcome everybody into the first edition of Boomer Bust with Russ. That is Russ Lande of the Montreal Alouettes, former NFL scout, XFL, CFL scout. I mean, the man has done wonders for the scouting community and is a big name. Glad to have you here. Also with us, the great Jason Fiener, who is Blitzalytics scouting director. I am Jack Bourgeois, part-time scout analyst, co-CEO of Blitzalytics.com, and this is the first episode of the Boomer Bust with Russ podcast. How are you guys doing today?
I'm doing great. The one thing I should let you know is as of a week ago, I am no longer with the Alouettes. It didn't make sense to continue in a situation I felt was not going to be positive going forward, so I am now strictly a media analyst, and will be offering my insights on everything known to mankind about football and the NFL draft.
Well, this is news to us. I apologize, but glad to have you here. I can't thank you enough, Russ. He is a definitely a huge centerpiece in Blitzalytics and a major supporter, probably our biggest supporter so far. Jason, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to get this podcast rolling, Boomer Bust with Russ. Excited to have Russ Lande here. It's been an incredible mentor, friend, partner for Blitz and for myself over the last year, and I'm excited to get this going.
Yeah. So for those that don't know, Russ has taught us all we know about scouting, along with every one of our other teachers through the SMWW Scouting and GM course. So shout out to SMWW, and if you happen to be going to the NFL Combine, please give us a shout out and see if we can come hang out with us. We will be hosting our own event out there in Indy. But let's talk some NFL draft. Let's talk some scouting. This is what this podcast is all about. And without further ado, we are going to jump back into 2018's NFL draft before we get ahead of ourselves and go into the 2019 draft class and all the prospects there. So we are going to jump back, talk a little bit about who we, some of the booms, some of the busts. We're going to do a top 10 redraft. We will do 11 through 20 and then 21 through 32 on the next two podcasts. So let's start this off with offensive Rookie of the Year and Defensive Rookie of the Year. Jason, who in your opinion is running away with the Offensive Rookie of the Year award?
There's only one guy that you can really give it to, and that's Saquon Barkley. He's currently on pace for 2,000 all-purpose yards, and if he does eclipse that mark, he would only be the third rookie all-time to do so, joining Eric Dickerson and Edgerrin James. Barkley deserves this Rookie of the Year award. However, a player that's not going to get votes strictly due to position, and I think he should be mentioned, is Quentin Nelson. He's been one of the best guards in the game since the moment he stepped on the field, and an absolute mauler. He's been one of the main reasons the Colts have gone through a renaissance in their offensive line.
Completely agree with him and the other tackle that they got in the second round, Smith. It's been a complete resurgence of an offensive line there. One hell of a rebuild in 1 year of a draft. I mean, it seems like the Colts definitely might have run away with this draft this year. Russ, what do you think?
I agree with the Saquon Barkley. He's been unbelievable. Philip Lindsay, the rookie out of Denver, has been tremendous for an undrafted kid, but he has not been at the level of Barkley. And Quentin Nelson has been spectacular for Indianapolis. But the one thing I would throw in there is it's sort of a shame the way things went in Cleveland, because if Greg Williams and Kitchens had been the head coach and offensive coordinator respectively from day one, we might not even be having the discussion about Saquon Barkley. This might be the Baker Mayfield show, because if you look at what he's done since that coaching change, he has looked like a frontline NFL starting quarterback with a chance to become not just a good starter, but an elite player. So while he won't win it this year, I don't believe, for Rookie of the Year, I think if those guys had been in place, he would have not just won it. He may have run away with it.
I couldn't agree more. He's been averaging over 100 QBR since they've taken over at the head coaching and OC spot. So I again have to go Saquon Barkley, though. This is a consensus runaway easy pick for us. I mean, he's got 1,753 yards from scrimmage, second to only Zeke Elliott, who has 11 more yards, but also has over nearly, I believe it's over 50 more carries or 50 more touches. So if you put it in that perspective, I just think that he's already, to me, in my personal opinion, and I can get slack at Jack Bourgeois, at me, he is the best back in the league right now. Just what he can do in terms of in between the tackles, outside the tackles, route running, catching the ball down the field. He can do what Todd Gurley can in terms of running people over in straight line speed, but Todd Gurley can't cut back and forth, and neither can Zeke. They don't have the same moves that he does, and he can do everything they can in terms of pass blocking and protection. So I think it's just a runaway. He has to win it, but Baker has been far beyond our expectations, even though he was both mine and Jason's and Blitzalytics consensus overall best, number one quarterback, I should say, not best player. We had Barkley, Chubb, and Nelson, I believe, over him in terms of rating, but he was right there. So in terms of on the other side of the ball, defensive rookie of the year, who do you guys got? There's quite a few. I mean, there's Darius Leonard, there's Leighton Vander Esch, there is Derwin James has been lighting it up. The list goes on. Who do you guys think, I'll start again with Jason, is the runaway candidate for defensive player of the year?
I actually don't think there's going to be a runaway candidate. I think there are 4 or 5 players that actually could win this award, and it could come down to week 16 or their 16th game. And my number one is going to be Darius Leonard. He has 135 tackles, 11 tackles for loss, 7 sacks, 4 forced fumbles, 2 fumble recoveries, and an interception while leading the Colts to a potential playoff berth. It's just, I don't believe Bradley Chubb can be disregarded. What he's doing opposite Von Miller. He just became the 11th rookie all time to get 12 sacks in his first year. He joined Javon Curse, Dwight Freeney, Reggie White, Leslie O'Neal, Simeon Rice, Mark Anderson, Charles Haley, Julius Peppers, Terrell Suggs, and Alden Smith. Other than Mark Anderson and Alden Smith, every other player on that list tops 74.5 sacks in their career. He has that potential to be the next all-star edge rusher.
Couldn't agree more. You basically took my two between him and Leighton Vander Esch is a close second, but I think it's got to be Darius Leonard. What about you, Russ? Who do you think stands out on the defense side of the ball?
Firstly, I'll say Leonard is a guy that just jumps out at you when you see the Colts play. I mean, he's a special football player. But to me, I just have a hard time not going the Chubb direction because there have been a lot of linebackers who come in the league who have 100, 120 tackles as rookies. And there have been some that even led the league as rookies. But when you get a guy who's dynamic off the edge as a pass rusher, who it looks like with 3 games left, he's probably going to break Javon Curse's record of 14.5 sacks as a rookie. Those guys are impossible to find. So I'd probably put Chubb 1 with Leonard 2. And I think Leonard's 2, but I will say he's not much ahead of the Derwin James kid for San Diego. James may not be as great an impact guy in terms of strictly at his position, but in terms of versatility, being able to line him up anywhere you want in a defense, James brings something to the field that very few guys in the NFL have. This is a guy who's played safety, both safety spots, corner. He's actually lined up as defensive end and at linebacker. I mean, this kid's got some unique skill sets to go with what most of these guys have, which is great intangibles. I just think James is a guy that's sort of been overlooked because he plays in San Diego, which is sort of the deathbed of professional football in the NFL. But he's a really, really special defensive player. They got lucky that he fell on draft day and they were able to grab him up.
Yeah, I completely agree. I'm still kicking myself in the butt as a Bucs fan for them not taking Derwin James at that 7 spot or at the, I believe, 12 spot either, which they could have taken him in either one of those. He has 3 interceptions, 12 pass breakups, 3.5 sacks, 88 combined tackles, 4 of those for a loss, and another 6 QB hits. So like you said, he's lined up at a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different positions on the field between linebacker and D end and corner and slot and both safety positions. It's insane what he's been able to do on the defensive side of the ball. I wouldn't be surprised if either one of those 3 players wins the Defensive Player of the Year, but I think the impact that Darius Leonard has had on the Colts defense as a whole just kind of stands out to me in terms of just what he's brought to an entire team. There is a bunch of studs on the LA Chargers, not San Diego, LA Chargers team. I do it every day. Don't worry.
It's especially when you're considering that the Colts might be a playoff team. You usually don't give recognition to the offensive rookie, defensive rookie of the year for playoff teams, but with the impact that he's had on that defense compared from 1 year, 2017 to 2018, Darius Leonard has impacted that team tenfold.
Completely
No
agree.
question.
All right, so let's jump into our top 10 redraft. I had trouble with this. I think I redrafted my redraft about 10 different times from last night to today. I just couldn't really decide. There's so many good players to try to plug and play, and so much to take in. Let's start off with Jason. We'll go Jason, Russ, and then to me with the first pick. Is anybody changing, or is it a consensus agreement that it has to be Baker Mayfield?
It has to be Baker Mayfield. He was the #1 quarterback in the draft. He is the #1 quarterback of 2018 as a rookie. He's been electric. He transformed that team. And like you said, if Greg Williams and Kitchens were the two coaches conducting him, he would have run away with Offensive Rookie of the Year. He would be the best quarterback in this draft, and he was.
And think about it, they might even be a playoff team.
Yeah.
If those guys have been coaching from day one. I mean, it's crazy to say, but there's a good chance the way they're playing that Greg Williams is going to lock up that job. I mean, if they keep winning and they end up with 8 wins or 9 wins after the start they had, I don't know how you don't give Greg that job full time and let him run with it. And I would agree with you. At one, I mean, there's no way you can't take Baker. I didn't have him #1 quarterback. I actually had Darnold a little ahead. But just what we've seen as rookies, you can't now say that you wouldn't take Baker. Baker is such a slam dunk. Darnold may prove to be a great quarterback, but we have not seen it game in and game out. I don't know if we've even seen Darnold play one full game where he looked like a star. With Mayfield, you've seen 2 or 3 games where from beginning to end, he has looked like a high-end quality NFL starter. So to me, that first pick, slam dunk, you have to go with Baker Mayfield.
Yep. It's consensus on all 3 of us. It's Baker Mayfield, no questions asked. At the number 2 spot, I think it's probably going to be the same thing. Does anybody not see the Giants not taking Baker Mayfield, or not Baker Mayfield, sorry, Saquon Barkley 100 out of 100 times with how big of an impact, especially seeing what they did when they gave him a full workload this last week with OBJ out? He only improved their offense almost. What do you guys think in terms of the #2 pick and the New York Giants?
You know, I mean, the only way they weren't going to take him at 2 is if Baker's not there. If Baker doesn't go 1, then they'd probably take him. But, I mean, Saquon has proven at least if you have an offense and you have an older quarterback like Eli and you're committed to Eli, you need this guy. He is a difference maker. He can change games when he has the ball in his hands, and he's not just a one-dimensional running back. This guy can help in all facets of the game, and he's not just a back who catches the ball out of the backfield. He's a back you can line up at slot. You can play him out at receiver in different alignments. His versatility, his consistency, and his ability to change games, he is a no-doubt guy that would be taken again at #2, even though I'm sure there's some people that'll still say they should have taken Darnold at 2 or Josh Allen or one of the quarterbacks that have a future. But I think when you look at what he's done and what they're trying to do there, which is win with the quarterback they have, this is a slam dunk pick.
Couldn't agree more.
Absolutely.
There's no way you don't take Baker right there. Or I keep saying that. Barkley, Saquon Barkley at the 2 pick. He's just a generational player. He's, like I said, the best back in the league, in my personal opinion right now, if not 1, 2, or 3. And Darnold and Allen both have their question marks attached to them. So we'll go on to the New York Jets and Sam Darnold. Is anybody still drafting Sam Darnold, even though he leads the league in turnovers? Even though he's missed a few games, he's still, I believe, the league leader in turnovers at this point.
There's one thing that I look at with that. I don't usually give too much thought into a rookie's interception rate. And that's just because Peyton Manning led the league in interceptions his rookie year as well. And Sam Darnold, yeah, he turned out okay. So Sam Darnold, yes, his flaws in college were his decision-making and his turnover rate, but I do believe that will improve. I don't think the Jets make a different decision going with Sam Darnold in his rookie year. He's going to improve. I don't know if he's going to be the guy they thought he was, but you can't just change that pick of Sam Darnold when you need a quarterback. You need a franchise guy. You need a face of your franchise. Darnold is that guy. He fits the mold, and he's going to keep improving.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right. I mean, I think there may be players that had better rookie years that might tempt them, like a Bradley Chubb, to give them that dynamic edge rusher. But I think when you look at what they had before this year, I think they made the right decision. And whether you had Mayfield or Darnold, they were both very close as quarterbacks. They feel they have their quarterback for the future. Now, personally, I don't know if I'd keep the coach and GM there, but that's up to the owner. But I think Darnold was the correct selection here. I think it made it tough, though, for Todd Bowles. I mean, this guy, in my opinion, is a good coach. And you give him a rookie quarterback and say, go out and win, that's almost impossible because most rookie quarterbacks are not very good.
Right. So you guys don't think that maybe, hindsight being 2020, that they might keep Teddy Bridgewater and go grab a Chubb or go grab a Ward or a Nelson or a Derwin James and might be better off at least for this year?
No, I think that they might keep the Teddy Bridgewater and let Sam rest for a little bit. I don't think they would have changed the pick, though.
Yeah, I don't think they would have changed the pick. I think the risk would have been by keeping Bridgewater. He's still only 26 or 27. You let him play, you may have just wasted the third pick overall because Bridgewater may turn out to be better than Darnold.
Right.
If he can get back to what he was before his injury, you never have to worry about that position again. So I don't think they would change the pick, but I do love Bridge. I think somebody's missing the boat on this kid.
I
somebody's
agree.
going to get a really good quarterback next year when his deal is up with the Saints.
Absolutely.
I'm in the same boat. I put here that I think they should have stuck with Bridgewater, but just from a franchise perspective, you got to go get your guy. Darnold's been very off at times, but he's had that poise. He's looked like a franchise quarterback when need be. He's brought his team back from, I think he's 2 fourth quarter comebacks now. So he can do it. And also you have to throw out there that he's doing it with next to no offensive talent or no weapons per se. So I'll stick with Darnold there, even though I think that Allen has been the better of the two quarterbacks between them. So we'll move on down to the 4th pick with Cleveland and Denzel Ward. We might have a same consensus feeling here. I know we are all in on the Bradley Chubb train and thinking that him and the rest of that defensive line would have been a huge, huge factor in getting after the quarterback. I mean, that is the biggest thing in the NFL, is being able to have a quarterback and or get after the quarterback. But now looking back with hindsight being 2020, they drafted Denzel Ward to stop Antonio Brown, and he did that quite well so far. So do you guys think that there's anybody you would slot in over Denzel Ward at this point?
Yeah, I actually would make a change here. I would take Bradley Chubb with this pick. This is who I thought they should have taken. This is who I think that they now should take with hindsight. This is not a knock on Ward at all because he's been sensational when on the field. But Chubb's talent and his drive, he has the talent to become the next great pass rusher, and you can't pass up that edge opportunity. If you could pair him with Myles Garrett, that's havoc. They're going to get pressure on almost every play. And yes, Denzel Ward is locking down some of the greats in the league, but that value with Bradley Chubb on the board is too much to overlook.
I agree with you. I mean, I think Denzel's done a great job. One of the top 3 or 4 rookies in the league in terms of when he was on the field, he was dynamic. But to me, if the quarterback's the most important guy in the field, then the guy who can knock those guys out of the game is the second. So this guy gives you a second dynamic pass rusher. And if you look at what San Diego does, when they line up Ingram and Bosa on the same side, it causes all sorts of havoc. And now, while I think Bosa is better than both the guys that the Browns would have if this scenario worked out, I think both those guys are better than Ingram. So they would have a great situation, 2 guys to move around, to play a lot of games, and in Greg Williams' defensive scheme, I think that they would be phenomenal. But let's also be realistic. It's not like we're saying take Chubb because that other guy was terrible. We're saying take Chubb solely by position because Ward has been, I think, not only outstanding, but I think he's been better at his position than most people thought he would be as a rookie. Not many guys come in and show that natural veteran sort of comfort level, instinct, awareness, and coverage that he has shown. He has looked like he's been playing corner in the NFL for 10 years, and he's only a rookie.
Absolutely.
Yeah, what he's been able to do, especially when guarding Antonio Brown in man coverage, has been quite impressive, to say the least. I think that he's allowed 1 touchdown to Antonio Brown, and that was on a back shoulder throw that nobody could have guarded anyways. So I am going to stick with Denzel Ward, and I could almost say Chubb. I'm 1A, 1B, 51-49 on this, but I think I would still lean to Denzel Ward because they still have that pass rusher, and they have a decent pass rush. They are one of the better pass rush teams. And the fact that they are one of the top turnover teams in the league, maybe that's a little bit different with Bradley Chubb in the lineup. And we also have to take into consideration that Chubb has Von Miller on that side, so maybe that has to have something to do with that, because you're gonna double team Von Miller first.
Garrett.
Yeah, no, I'm saying in Chubb with what they have with the at Denver, who do you double team if it's Myles Garrett or Chubb? You have to at this point you still have to double team Von Miller. Is all I'm saying. So at the 5th pick, now we have this is going to definitely be a little bit different from here on out. The Denver Broncos did select Bradley Chubb with the 5th pick. Who are you guys slating in there now?
So I'm actually going to switch it over. They needed help. They kind of still need help on their offensive line. And with Bradley Chubb out of the equation, I'm going to grab Quentin Nelson, who has been already an All-Pro as a rookie. He's in line to become one of the first-team All-Pro guards this year.
What about you?
I mean, that makes a lot of sense. I think when you look at Denver, their offensive line, in my opinion, has been a big part of the reason that they've struggled so much. So I think, especially when you consider the fact that this is a team that over the past 3 or 4 years, their offensive line has gotten continually worse, I think Nelson here makes a lot of sense. I'm not sure he would have the same impact there, because I think playing with Andrew as your quarterback, playing with Costanzo as your left tackle, I think those things make it a little bit easier for a rookie to get in there and be successful. But Nelson would definitely upgrade Denver's offensive line and would help that offense a ton.
Okay, so you guys are definitely going to disagree with me on this one, but I still think that they need their quarterback. Case Keenum is definitely not the answer. Case Keenum played well, but that was under Shermer as his OC, and having all those weapons around him and playing in a dome in the Vikings last year. That system was just set up for him. Any quarterback's going to have success. Even Eli Manning's having success now under that system, or having his best year statistically. So I am going to say that the Denver Broncos should have drafted Josh Allen over Bradley Chubb, who is still on the board for me, for the simple fact that I think he would have more of an impact than Case Keenum would, and would be able to do more behind that weaker offensive line. I know I'll get flack for this, but that's just my personal opinion, that Josh Allen has been able to do wonders. If he was to have a Emmanuel Sanders, or if he had a Philip Lindsay, if he had any form of a run game, I think he would be even far beyond the player he is right now. So we'll see where that lies, but that's just my personal opinion. You guys are welcome to bash me if you'd like.
The one thing I'll add to that, because I do think it's not only a good choice, but I think what is most interesting is in today's NFL, a guy like Josh Allen gets killed by the analytics for accuracy and things like that. If you look back 30 years ago, the guy running the Broncos coming out of Stanford was very similar to Josh Allen. The best athlete in the draft, tremendous arm, could do anything he wanted athletically, a huge man. And Elway and Allen share a lot of similarities physically. So I could totally see John Elway as the GM of the Broncos saying, you know what? We are going to get that quarterback, and we're going to go with a guy that reminds me of me, and that would be Josh Allen. Because I remember Elway when he was coming out, not that I was grading him as a scout, but I remember him as a player in college and the NFL, and he was a guy who would make big plays, carry his team on the back, but also struggled with consistency in terms of accuracy, would make some boneheaded plays at times. And that's a little bit of what Allen was at Wyoming and has been so far in the NFL. So that doesn't shock me so much. I think it's actually a good analysis by you.
Appreciate that. At the number 6 pick, sorry, this will be a little bit different now for us, but at the 6th pick for me personally, with Nelson still being on the board, I say they stick with Nelson. You guys, I know Jason has to switch this up with Nelson going already. So who do you guys have with the 6th pick for Indianapolis?
I'm going to go with the defensive rookie of the year and Darius Leonard. Darius Leonard, he's not going to be able to stay into the mid-round 2 slate that the Colts did get him in. And with this pick, his impact of 135 tackles, leading the league, 11 tackles for loss, 7 sacks, 4 forced fumbles, 2 fumble recoveries, and 1 interception is game-changing. And he has been the leader as a rookie in that Colts defense that they can't go without.
Russ? You know, I probably debate it between two. I love Leonard. I think he's a phenomenal player. I think if we're just doing it on what we saw as a rookie, yeah, I think they might take Leonard. But I think if you look at it based on what they did as a rookie, what school they came from, where they felt they could have got him, I could see the Colts even now saying, we still think we can get Leonard in the 2nd and maybe going with Derwin James here. Because by getting James and then hoping to get Leonard, they might get 2 superstars. But I totally get that because Leonard's been so incredible this year. I think it just comes down to if they think he would actually still slip to them in the 2nd. But I think that knowing Chris Ballard as their GM, he is very focused on production, athleticism, competitiveness, and intangibles. Leonard, he checks all those boxes, and so does James. So I think either one of them, if I had to pick, it would be James here, just my guess, but either one of them makes this pick perfect.
Absolutely.
Yeah, on my 1 of 5, 6 different redrafts that I did, I both slotted them in there, but wound up sticking with Quentin Nelson. If Quentin Nelson's on the board, they hands down go with him over Leonard, over Derwin James, just like they did. But so with the number 7 pick, technically this was the Buccaneers pick. If the Bucs were there, which we're going to consider them not, I definitely would have slotted in Derwin James. But seeing as how Buffalo does not have Josh Allen on my board, and somehow, for some reason, Nick Chubb is still there, then I think they would have taken, Bradley Chubb. Bradley Chubb would have been my player that Buffalo took for the simple fact that Shaq Lawson didn't pan out. They already have such a stout defense. He alone would have made them arguably the best defense in the league. So that's what I would have gone. I know that they are in desperate need of a quarterback at that time, but I just think that they might have gone elsewhere. Maybe they go after Teddy Bridgewater. Maybe they do something. I'm pretty sure the Jets wouldn't have traded him within the division, but they could have done something else. I don't think they would have gone after Rosen, especially behind that offensive line, which is equally as bad as Arizona's. Rosen hasn't been able to do much with a bad offensive line. So I personally would put Chubb there. What's your guys' take?
Yeah, for the Bills.
Because I think, at least I think we both had Josh Allen still there. I would still have Josh Allen be their pick. If Josh weren't there, that's a tough one. I don't know if Rosen's the guy that would match up with a lot of the things that coach and that GM want in terms of a physical, nasty, competitive quarterback. I think they may have gone in a different direction. I think Chubb, who you mentioned, or Derwin James, if they were available, would be guys they consider. But because Josh Allen, in my eyes, would still be there, I think that's the guy they go with. He's a big, strong-armed kid. And I think in Buffalo, they view it as we're willing to trade a little bit in terms of precision and accuracy because we're getting a big kid who's going to be able to play in bad weather. He's going to make plays with his feet. We're going to trade a little bit of what's becoming hot for maybe what works a little bit better for a bad weather team.
Absolutely. Allen's still on my board as well in this one, and he's flashed elite athleticism and a rocket arm through his first NFL season. Of course, he has not come without mistakes. He has a 52 completion percentage, some fumbles, some interceptions, but he's still on the board, and Buffalo went with him for a reason. He is their future. They're going to attempt to build around him and with him, and his potential is too good to pass up with this pick.
Yep, it's hard. It's hard to disagree with if he's there on the board, like which I said I slated him before. But he is the perfect quarterback for not only that that division, but for that team. He's been able to do wonders without a successful or a without the shady that we've known. Again, they have no offensive line. He's pressured on over 40% of his dropbacks. So what he's been able to do is quite impressive without having really anything around him, similar to like what Sam Darnold has. But Darnold at least has somewhat of an offensive line. So at the number,
I do actually think if Josh Allen weren't on the board, somebody that I'd be looking at would be Mike McGlinchey. And as a tackle on the Bills' offensive line, which they are sorely lacking, he's been able to slot in for the Niners as a already startable cornerstone of that offensive line. And if Allen wasn't there, I think that they would be looking at him as their future tackle.
I could see that. I was trying to figure out how to get an offensive line in that spot, but I think they just took. I picked best player available on the board, and so that's why I threw Chubb in there. At the 8th pick, we have the Chicago Bears, who took Roquan Smith. But can we say Roquan has been the best linebacker? I think it would be a little bit hard if you have Darius Leonard or Leighton Vander Esch on the board. So I personally chose Darius Leonard at the 8th spot over Roquan Smith, even though Roquan Smith has been able to fly around. And maybe the fact that he isn't in consideration for Defensive Player of the Year is because he had that late start to the season, and maybe because of the simple fact that he's kind of overshadowed by the rest of the talent that's on that defense. What do you guys think?
You know, I mean, I look at it like I would hate to replace Roquan because he's filled his role perfectly there. I mean, his range, chasing down plays in pursuit, his aggressiveness filling the hole, his occasional pressure when he blitzes, he's been fantastic for them. Now, the fact that you have 3 or 4 all-pros on that defense ahead of him sort of, I think, keeps the spotlight off him. I mean, whether it's Vander Esch or Leonard, I think they're both probably having better rookie years. But has anybody or could anybody fill the role that Roquan Smith has filled better this year and grab more attention? I don't know. I don't know if Leonard could do more, just because I think Smith has done about as well as you can do based on where he was put. But at the same time, Leonard looks to me to have a better future. So if you put a gun to my head, yeah, I would take Leonard. But I will say I think Roquan Smith has done a really good job. He just hasn't got much publicity because there's so much defensive talent around him.
Yeah, I agree. I think you're splitting hairs between the two right now, and for the simple fact that he's just been overshadowed by so much defensive talent, so many good linebackers on that team, that he technically is the 3rd or 4th best linebacker on his team. So it's kind of hard for him to find success. But I mean, he's still, if you watch the tape, he's flying across the field. When they do have him blitz the A gap, I mean, he's coming right through there with lightning quick speed, which is exactly what we seen when he was in college. So it's splitting hairs, but I'll lean a little bit towards Darius Leonard, like you said. If they put a gun to my head, if you made me bet, that's who I was.
Personally, with the role that Roquan Smith is playing, I don't think the Bears choose Leonard or Vander Esch if they're both still on the board. I think they still go with Smith in that case when you're talking about the 3 of them, just because of the role that they wanted the linebacker to play. They want that speed, sideline to sideline, cover the back out of the backfield, rush occasionally, get the pressure. And that's Roquan Smith. He's played that role to a T. However, there's one person that's still on my board in this redraft, and that's Derwin James. And if you're Derwin James and you're the Chicago Bears and you have that do-it-all safety, versatile, can play the box, can play the top safety, can play outside corner slot, rush the passer, and you have that Swiss Army knife and puzzle piece that any defensive coordinator can play around with, I think that's their guy.
Yep, like I said, splitting hairs, couldn't agree more. It's a fine-tooth comb to try and figure out who you would take over one, but I think Smith may, just his speed alone, may be the better fit. But I'm going Darius Leonard right there, just because, I mean, it's hard to not slot in the Defensive Rookie of the Year if that is who ends up being there. So at the 9 spot, if McGlinchey is still on the board, I am for sure taking McGlinchey. He has been one of the best. He's obviously been the best rookie tackle on the, bar none, in my personal opinion. That you've seen the success that all 3 of those quarterbacks have had so far between between Jimmy Garoppolo, CJ Beathard, and Nick Mullins have all been able to play. And that's something that you see because of the simple fact that it's behind that offensive line. You give anybody that much time, even with the lack of weapons. I mean, Pettis has looked good. Garcon's been in and out of the lineup the entire time, and so has Marquise Goodwin. But yet they still find success in the offense, and I think that is solely tied to the offensive line. Same thing when you put in any running back there. They've had 4 different running backs that have had success. So if it's me, I am personally putting Mike McGlinchey and sticking with that pick.
I agree 100%. I mean, may not be the flashy name and he may not be getting a lot of publicity, but I think if you ask the people at the 49ers, they'd say they are thrilled They think that going forward next year when Garoppolo is healthy, that this kid will have a whole year under his belt, that they're going to have that left tackle spot sort of locked down for as long as Garoppolo's there. This guy should be his left tackle. They got to be thrilled with this pick. So I think there's no doubt that this is who they go with.
Yeah, I'm in a little different boat. I do agree. I think he has been absolutely phenomenal. And after a year under his belt, he's going to be that left tackle of the future in San Francisco. But with Denzel Ward still on the board, I think they have to go with the stud corner that's been able to shut down the legs of Antonio Brown and some of the elite stars of the NFL. He's been absolutely fantastic. 3 interceptions, 2 defensive touchdowns. And his value as a rookie at the number 9 spot would be too much to pass up.
Yep. So across the board consensus, Mike McGlinchey for the Niners, the 9th pick. Now this one, the 10th pick, I'm very eager to see where you guys go with this. Josh Rosen, it is only year 1. We can almost kind of chalk this up as a Jared Goff type season, but he has not looked good. He's not looked good behind that offensive line. And this is something we've known, that when under pressure while he was at UCLA, he was a bad quarterback. When he had time to throw and he had a clean pocket, he was one of the better, if not the best quarterback and the most pro-ready quarterback. But it just has not panned out this year, and it's not due to weapons. I mean, he has DJ, he has Larry Fitzgerald, he has a emerging Christian Kirk. So do you guys still go with Rosen, or do you slot in a defensive player? Where do you guys go on this pick?
I think it's tough. I mean, understand the going with Rosen here because basically it's Sam Bradford's on your team. You're paying him $20 million. You need somebody young to hope it's that guy. So I get Rosen, but I was not sold on him coming out of school. And what I've seen this year, I've seen flashes, but still I'm not sold on him. So, I mean, if it's me and it's my pick, I still have Derwin James available. I'm going to take him. Get me a well-rounded, all-around defensive player that I can use in a lot of different spots on the defense, and try to find a quarterback in that 2nd or 3rd round and see if we can find somebody for the future there. But Derwin James, to me, is too good to pass up right here when you're taking a guy like Rosen, who to me was a big wild card, and he's even more of one right now.
Go for it, Jason.
Yeah, absolutely. If Derwin James is still on the board, I used him for 2 picks ago for the Bears. But Derwin James makes a lot of sense here. If I'm the Cardinals, I was not sold on Rosen. He was my number 4 quarterback coming out last year. I'm still not sold on him. I've seen flashes. He's been able to throw a pretty ball now and again to the corner out and maybe in the seam, but he still struggles under center. He looks uncomfortable in the pocket. However, I'm not sold that they changed the pick. They needed a quarterback. He has been better than Sam Bradford. He has shown bright spots for the few that he's had. I think that they would go with Rosen. I would stick with Rosen with the 10th overall pick, just for the upside and the potential in the quarterback position. But getting a guy like Derwin James or a cornerstone defensive player would not be a bad pick either.
I look at this pick, and it's between 2 players with me. Derwin James has looked outstanding, so it's kind of hard to not say that. But they are 30th against the run. So I actually will, for some reason, and it kills me to not find a spot for Derwin James, I would throw Leighton Vander Esch into this defense. They have a fast defense, but that has been their biggest hindrance this entire season, is being able to stop the run. You already have a Patrick Peterson, and although he may be aging, we just seen the stat that he hasn't allowed over 80 yards receiving to anyone he's covered in the last 4 years, or since 2014. So they still have good secondary. They just drafted Budda Baker a year ago. So I wouldn't slide in another safety. I would go Leighton Vander Esch to add to that already fast, quick-paced defense, because they need to be able to stop the run. And Josh Rosen just isn't it. Where they're sitting right now, again, hindsight's 2020, so we really can't say this. They're already in line to draft another quarterback, and I think a lot of these quarterbacks, or whoever they would be able to pick up this year, would be a better prospect than Rosen at this point, especially without any form of an offensive line. They're definitely going to need to look to add to that offensive line this year if they have any chance of salvaging his career. All right. Before we wrap this on up, I would like to get your opinion, Russ, on prospects coming out of the draft who are taking a break and deciding to forego their Senior Bowl, or it's not only the Senior Bowl, but the any bowl games. What are the benefits? What are the downfalls? Where do you think, does it help them in the draft? Does it hurt them in the draft? Is it a per team basis? How do you think that goes come this year? It's definitely becoming more and more of a trend.
First, I don't think it really hurts them. There may be a few old curmudgeons in scouting departments that'll say, oh, he didn't play in the game, he doesn't love it, and whatever. But those people are of a generation that's not paying attention. The reality is, yes, would all scouts greedily like to see these guys playing the bowl games? Of course. We want to see them against the best competition in the biggest game of their career. Of course we would. But I think we're also realistic to understand that this has become a business. And when you see a player like Jalen Smith, who literally was going to be a top 3 or 4 pick in the whole draft, slide down and get lucky that he got picked where he did by the Cowboys. Many teams weren't even going to take him to the later rounds because there was no assurance that he'd ever even be a productive player again. It makes sense for players to skip the bowl game after their senior year is concluded or their junior year if they're coming out early as an underclassman, because why risk the injury for one game? And I think the other thing that gets sort of overlooked here, to the fans, it's all about, we want our team to win in that bowl game. We want to do great. I can tell you from being around most college programs, yes, the teams that are in the playoffs in college, they want to win. A lot of the other teams in college, they view this 1 month of extra practice as really prep time for the following year. So they're not really, the coaches, they won't come out and say they don't care if they win or lose, but they love the fact almost that their star left tackle who's leaving, they get to spend a month working with his replacement as a starter. They get a whole extra month. Because remember, in college, you have limited hours every week, 20, that you're allowed to have a kid in your building, being coached, being on the practice field, watching film with the coaches. There's a limitation. So to get 1 month extra to work with a young man who's going to be replacing one of these guys, I think a lot of college coaches, they would never say it publicly, but I think a lot of them love to see guys skip that bowl game. Because unless they're playing for the national championship, this bowl game is really not going to have much effect on their job security and on their ability to recruit. So I think a lot of coaches really actually like it. And for scouts, for the few curmudgeons that make this a big deal, maybe it's time to move on to a new profession. Because if you can't understand this as a business and respect a young man for making that decision for his family's future, then you're probably in the wrong business at this point in time.
You got anything to elaborate on that, Jason?
Absolutely. Just goes to show you how you're gonna love it when your teammate, your brother, can play next to you in that bowl game. But if your teammate isn't voting for you to stay healthy while you're going into the draft process, get prepared for the draft for the individual workouts, then I don't know how much of a brother they are. And then you have to look at it as a school as well as that family attribute. And just look at it as Arizona State's N'Keal Harry, who had to sit down with his head coach, had a long discussion with his head coach and athletic director and his family to come up with the real decision that he wanted to do. And his coach was all for him missing this bowl game to prepare for his future. And that's what you want to see. That's a recruiting aspect, that's a family aspect, and that's a future aspect.
Yeah, I agree. I think it just depends on where that team is at, where that player is at in terms of where they're going to be possibly ranked in the draft. If it's a team that, it's just a meaningless bowl game, then I completely understand. If it's a Baker Mayfield situation, then I think that only helped Baker Mayfield last year in the draft by not foregoing the college playoffs, by trying to go out there and win it for his team, and doing everything he could as a team player and as a leader of his team. And I think that's why he ended up going number one. Had to do more, just as much to do with his personality for Dorsey as it did his play, because he's so fiery and he wanted to play that game. So I appreciated seeing him do it, but I completely understand from a player's perspective, if you're going to be a first-round pick, if you're already dealing with the lingering or nagging injury, then yeah, I would completely avoid trying to risk an NFL future. It's a lot of money on the line. So we've seen that with players who have either gotten in trouble right at the last minute or players who got hurt. Jalen Smith comes to mind. It cost them millions and millions of dollars to play these final games when really there wasn't any money. There wasn't money. They're not making money in that game. They're only helping their team. And like Russ said, maybe it's actually hindering the coaching staff for the season after, getting somebody else some playing time. Absolutely. So we will end this podcast, this Boom or Bust podcast, with a segment of Boom or Bust. So can you guys each give me one or two players that you thought has boomed this year through week 15?
Yeah, I'm going to start off with Philip Lindsay, an undrafted free agent out of Colorado who's on pace to break 1,000 yards and should do that in week 15 of the regular season. Through 13 games, Lindsay has accrued 967 yards on 5.8 yards per attempt in 9 touchdowns, while adding 29 receptions for 210 yards and another score. He's been the biggest surprise and has almost wiped off Royce Freeman from the map. It's Philip Lindsay's backfield, and he has run away with it.
I couldn't agree more, and I'll give you guys a funny story. When this college season started, I had an NFL scout send me a quick text. He said, you really ought to take a look at this Philip Lindsay. He goes, he's probably not going to get a chance in the NFL, and he might be a perfect guy for the CFL. So I went and pulled film on him, and I texted him back. I said, if he ain't getting a chance in the NFL, then you people are missing something. I said, I don't know if he can ever start, but I said, this guy can make plays in space. I said, I don't think he'll ever see the day in the CFL. And it turned out this kid's a rock star. He's been so much better than I think not only the Broncos, but anybody in the league could have envisioned. Hopefully he will be the 10th or 12th now, shorter running back to become so productive that teams will finally say it's not about height. If you want to worry about a small running back, worry about a guy that's 5'8", 5'9", 5'10", that's 160, 170 pounds. Don't worry about the guys that are 5'8" and 195 and rocked up and muscular. Worry about the guys that are thin-framed and don't have the ability to take hits and stay in the lineup. This kid's spectacular. I think he's got a long career ahead of him. And in today's NFL, where playing in space is so vital, this kid could put up some huge numbers as teams, especially next year. Denver's got more acclimation to what he's good at, what he's not good at, and can scheme some more things to him. I could see this kid really breaking out and making these numbers from this year look pedestrian compared to what he does in the future.
Yeah, think of what he could do with an offensive line. So my boom, and it's somebody who I was super high on, who had arguably the worst combine performance in history, and that is Orlando Brown. He has slotted in and been one of the better rookie offensive linemen. I think he's the 3rd ranked rookie offensive tackle in terms of pressures and sacks allowed. He is a mauler in the run game. And no, he can't run very fast. And no, he is not very quick, but he is a mountain of a man, and he has bullied some guys. If you look on film, what he's been able to do to some of the top defensive ends and top defensive tackles in the league, you're not pushing him back. It was never seen. He never lost to a bull rush his entire time at Oklahoma last year. And I haven't watched, every game or every snap, but I can almost guarantee you that he has not lost to a bull rush this year either. He's just an immovable object. And yeah, he might be a little slow and a little slow getting off the line, but he doesn't need much time to recover. My bust on the other side, and I will start it off, is actually somebody who I had slotted right behind him. I had Orlando Brown, my number 2 top tackle, and I had Colton Miller as my number 3. And Colton Miller has actually allowed the most sacks by a rookie, 11, the most pressures with 49. And he has definitely underperformed in that spot. I know Gruden certainly had to have been hoping to grab Mike McGlinchey, and the fact that he wasn't there, they dropped back in the draft, still took what should have been the best all-around all-around tackle. He just has not. He's definitely underperformed. His hands are not as good. He's not as strong. He's certainly not somebody who's as strong as a Orlando Brown, and that has definitely been noticed. His hand placement is off. His footwork isn't perfect. I called him probably the all-around, in terms of all-around run game, athleticism, pass blocking. I called him the all-around best left tackle in the game, and I think I was way off, so I will certainly eat some crow on that. he has room to grow, so it's still early. He had to be slotted in at the left tackle spot pretty quickly when going from the right to the left due to the fact that I can't think of his name, left tackle for the Raiders got hurt this year. Donald Penn, thank you. I should know that as a Bucs fan. And it just he definitely was thrown into the wolves. You have to imagine some of the players that he's going up against in the South, and who a lot of the big Pro Bowl, all pro players that he's had to face this year, they've definitely eaten him alive. And 49 pressures and 11 sacks is just too much to give for a first round pick. Who do you guys have as a bust for this year?
Somebody that I really look at is Rashaan Evans, who the Titans picked. They jumped ahead of the Patriots because they did believe that they were going to take him. And Rashaan Evans, he's only started 6 games this year, racked up 40 tackles, 1 quarterback hit. He has not been extremely productive, and he has not been the player that the Titans or anybody else thought he would be coming out of Alabama. He has a lot of room to grow, but that's somebody I look at.
You know, I agree with you. Rashaan Evans has been disappointing. I think a lot of people thought you'd get an impact guy, like a lot of recent Alabama linebackers. But I have to say Colton Miller, to me, is the slam dunk of this. I mean, this is a kid that when I watched him at UCLA, and I watch UCLA almost every week, that's where I started my football career in terms of working. This is an athletic kid. He can do whatever you want physically, but he just played like a finesse player this year. I mean, you let guys get into his chest. He got pushed around. He didn't maintain his footwork. Now, do I think 2 years from now he'll probably be what people hoped? Yes. But this year he was a major disappointment, and I think he really caused problems for that offense. I think next year he'll be better, and I think that offense will be dramatically better if he can just be 50% better than he is now. But, yeah, he was a real disappointment, Colton, and it really hurts to say because I'm always rooting for those UCLA guys.
Anybody else in terms of boom or bust that you guys can think of? You have anybody else on the list? An honorable mention, I should say.
The only other guy I'd mention is the Penny, the running back with Seattle.
Rod Penny.
He had that one game where he looked like a rock star. I think he had 12 for 90-something or 130-something. Mm-hmm. But beyond that, he looked a little one-dimensional, a little bit straight-line-ish in the games that I've seen, and he can't get on the field. He's really the third running back. So he's a disappointment. You can't write him off, obviously, just like you don't write any of these rookies off after 1 year. But for a running back, it's got to be a little bit concerning because running back is really the easiest position to translate to in the NFL, and especially for a team like Seattle where they're running the ball. They're not trying to throw the ball 35 times. They want to run it 35 times. So the fact that he can't get on the field is sort of scary.
Jason?
Yeah, definitely Rashad Penny. He was, I think, my 7th running back actually coming into this year, 7th or 8th. So I was surprised when the Seahawks traded back and selected him with the 27th overall pick, and he just has not looked the part. I thought that he was going to gain control after they selected him with the 1st-round pick, and then Chris Carson reportedly came back healthy, and now he's the main guy. If you can't get on the field, especially as a number 1 overall pick, when you're fighting a late-round guy for playing time, that's something to scare a lot of people.
Yeah, I definitely did not like that pick. I was very high on Rashad Penny. He's flashed at times. That cutback run on Thursday Night Football a week ago was beautiful, but or was that last Sunday night? One of the two. He's flashed, but still he just hasn't been the player we expected, and he definitely hasn't been the resurrector of that offense in terms of the run game. I mean, it's been Chris Carson's job. And Mike Davis has been a darn good number 2. So what I will say is I believe I had Penny number 2, and I had Nick Chubb at 3 in my running back rankings and my running back reports. Nick Chubb has basically has been a heck of a player so far this season. His yards per carry, I believe, is number 1 in the league. And what he's been able to do as soon as Carlos Hyde has left has been outstanding. He's averaging, I think it's his 5th straight game with a rushing touchdown. I think him and Baker Mayfield are going to have a beautiful, long future ahead of them. All right, guys. Well, that is all the time we have for the very first edition of Boom or Bust with Russ. I'm Jack Bourgeois. That is Jason Fiener. And this has been sponsored by Blitzalytics, blitzalytics.com, where scouting meets analytics, and you meet the newest crop of off-field talent. look for us at the NFL Combine. Look for us at the Senior Bowl. We will be there. Come say hi. Any last words, ladies and gentlemen?
Nothing. This is a great week. Get excited for tomorrow's Chiefs-Chargers game. This is
Absolutely.
exciting time of year for the NFL.
Absolutely. Get ready for postseason. Good luck to everybody in their fantasy championship and playoff weeks. Thank you for coming out. I'm excited to get to the second edition coming out next week.
Yep. See y'all next week. Thanks for tuning in, and appreciate having you, Russ.
You got it. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.